Welcome to the Data Mining Excel Pivots tutorial. As a business professional, your success highly depends on your ability to manage information, see great opportunities and/or weaknesses where others cannot, and also to recognize the importance of data to information. Now imagine data as being any words or numbers that you can gather. And in this case, gather means store on a computer, Excel spreadsheet, Word document, or database. If you add layers of meaning to that piece of data, then you turn it into information. Information is what we can actually use. This actually holds the value of an opportunity or the value of a threat identified early on. Now imagine a large mountain, and inside that mountain you know that there's a few $1 billion worth of gold. You have two options. One is you can blow up the mountain, and of course very little of it will be left. The bad part is you're going to get some of your gold, which will be contaminated, and you risk missing, of course, a lot of valuable resource. Option B would be to strategically find out and know that there is gold, where it is, and take out only what you need, so you leave the mountain intact for future generations to enjoy and possibly more resources, but you get exactly what you want, which is all the gold at that moment. Now instead of gold, imagine the mountain as being a big pile of words and numbers or data, and at this moment to make a critical decision, either to avoid a problem or create new value for your company, you want to get only the gold, the data that you need at this moment, and you want all of it. You don't want to miss any of it. That, of course, would be called data mining, and we're going to learn how to strategically get all the data that you need fast, accurately, with consistency using pivot tables. Now that you have an understanding of what data mining is, let's look at one of the most popular tools used to perform those actions. In Excel, you want to open up the file called Excel Pivot Table Data Raw. And once you open it, you're going to see that there are 4 tabs at the bottom: Data 1, Data 2, Data 3, and SEL Metrics. Each set of data is different. They're not really related to each other, and we use 4 different types of data here for our exercise just to kind of see the different kinds of things that pivots can do. So the first thing is, let's have a look. You have to make sure that when you get data from other people or other departments, that it is actually cleaned up to be used in pivots. And it's a simple process. Clean up means that there are no blank columns and there are no blank rows, and also that there's nothing extra touching at the bottom. So you cannot touch anything on this line because it will become part of the data. So take a little bit of time in your workplace to clean up the data. Now let's get started. First step, click anywhere inside. Make sure you're not outside. It has to be inside in a cell with something in it. At the top, click the Insert tab, Pivot Table, and OK. And what you notice at the bottom is that your Data 1 tab stays exactly the way it is. The data is still there. It's not going to be touched. But Pivots creates a new sheet, and you can have as many of these sheets as you like. Of course, you can scroll back and forth to access them. And the idea is you might be able to answer 5, 6, 7, 8 different items using one sheet. And there's a couple of times when you don't want to recycle a sheet, and I'll explain those to you later. So let's get started with the actual pivots. This area here is where your answers will appear, where your numbers or lists of items will appear. And depending on the version of Excel you're using, this might or might not look the same, but it does exactly the same thing. Now on the right hand side, these are all the column headings that you found in your data sheet. And of course the first part is to understand what each column means. So I'll kind of briefly explain what this is. We're operating in several countries, and it looks like 2, but we'll verify that later. So certainly we have USA and UK. These are names of salespeople that work for us. This is the date of an order. So each line here represents one order or one invoice for a specific customer. That's the ID number for the order, the face value of the invoice or the sales or the revenue, the cost of that sale, that's the cost of goods sold, the quantity sold, and the days it took to close the deal. So the longer the days to close the deal means the salesperson wasn't really that efficient. And as you go through each of these different sets of data, you'll notice that different columns mean different things. And certainly you're free to ask and certainly generate some sort of an understanding about it. Quite often though, you will see these little red things in the corners, and that will explain to you what these difficult columns actually mean. So let's go back to sheet 2. These are my column headings. And you notice some of them are words like country or salesperson, even order ID. These are actually words. And words, you can either count them, how many there are, or you can see a list of them. The rest, like sales or cost or quantity, are actually numbers. And numbers, you can count how many there are. You can add them up. You can average them out quickly, or you can see a list of the different types of numbers. And really, that's all pivots can do for you, but that's all powerful. So down here, you've got 4 boxes. You've got values, which is over here, row labels, which is this over here, column labels, which is this little thing over here, and report filter, which is this here. Now, I'm going to number those boxes, box 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, when you drag and drop one of these columns into a box, it will do something different. And the more you practice, the more you realize when to drag something into a certain box. So the easy part is that report filter up here, or this box, box 4, we don't really use that often. In fact, it's the easiest one to use, and I'll demonstrate that later. Box 2, row labels, and box 3, column labels, actually do exactly the same thing. The difference is one does it vertically this way, the other does it vertically this way. And again, I will demonstrate. And box 1, the most important one, only does one thing. It shows you a number, either a total, a count, or an average. So let's have a look. Let's come up with the question. I'd like to know my total sales or my total revenue. I tend not to check the box. I actually tend to drag and drop into box 1. Okay, and over here you get a number, and if you'd like to format it, go ahead. Usually you don't want to. Typically you're not going to print this off and give it to people. You're going to use this number in your own report and then explain it. So what this means is that my total sales or total revenue is $1.217 million, and that's pretty cool. Now, if I want to break this sales down by country, I can take country and put it in box 2, right down here. And look what pivots did for me. It actually broke it down by UK and USA, and the total remains the same. And that's the beauty of pivots right there. You actually know 50% of pivots right now. Now, a question would be, how many countries do we operate in? And the answer is 2, because if there was any more, you would actually see the name over here. Now, this is what pivot means. If you don't want to see country here, you rather see it across the top, just take it from box 2 and drag it into box 3, and you'll see UK, USA. And pivots doesn't know how you want to see it. It's totally up to you. And the reason we might do this, we might put short lists across the top and very long lists this way. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got 2 countries. We've got a bunch of salespeople. I'm going to take salesperson. I'm going to put it in row labels. So look at that. It took the total, same number, $1.217 million, but it broke it down by country, UK versus USA, but then it also broke it down by salespeople. So the total for each salesperson's here. Now, if a question was how many salespeople work for us, you can just highlight these, look down here at the bottom, and it'll tell you 9. There are 9 salespeople who work for us. How many work in the UK? Well, there's 4. How many work in the USA? There's 5. You know Callahan does not work in the UK because there's nothing there. And if I ask you a question, how many people work in both countries? Well, the answer is 0, because a number does not appear under both countries for any single person. Now, let's take salesperson out, and the way you take things out, you could uncheck it, but it's better if you just take it from row labels and drop it here. You see the X? That'll get rid of it. Okay, that's called a pivot. Now, a separate question is, I'm just going to put country over here in row labels, is what percentage of my total sales is a UK responsible for, or what are they contributing? So way off to the side here, don't go touching the table, just go way off to the side here. Let's make it a little bit bigger. What you want to do is actually type in B5, which is a UK sales, divided by the total, B7. And that's UK divided by total will tell you, well, let's format it for percent, a few decimals, 26.94%. And if you really wanted to do USA, you can do that, B6 divided by B7. And that would be 73.05%. Now, if you had a long list, and I'll just demonstrate, I'll take country out, and I'll put salesperson in, If you had a long list of these that you wanted to do, well, let's see. And by the way, I don't want to click on this cell because you get all of this and you're not able to copy it down. It's much better if you actually type the cell address in. So B5, Buchanan's sales divided by the total, which is in B14. And that will give me 5.65% for Buchanan. Now, I cannot copy this down the way it is, because if I copy it, B14 will become B15, B16, B17, and this will keep moving. So do you remember we highlight and we glue by pressing F4? So now when we copy down, B5 will change to B6, B7, B8, but this will not change. So let's have a look. And of course the last number should be 100%. There we go. So this tells me the relative contribution to sales for each person, and I believe this one is the highest, Peacock, and this one would be probably the lowest right here. Okay, this one here. Now let's go back to data 1, and I'm going to start a fresh pivot. So I'm going to click Insert, Pivot Table, OK. And you notice the first pivot table is already there. It might be called Sheet 1 or Sheet 2, it doesn't matter. But we have a fresh one here, a brand new one. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a look at sales. Okay, my total sales are the same, $1.27 million. I'll just format it. You don't have to, but I will. And I want to do something about dates. So I want to see when the sales are actually happening. So I'm going to put order date here. And when you put something like dates in the row labels, it's actually going to list each unique one out. So have a look. It says on 7/11/2003, sales are $3,598. Now, that doesn't mean there was only one sale. If there were 6 sales on the same date, you're only going to see the date here once. Okay, it's going to group it for you. So, if you want to actually dig deep or drill down and see what happened on this date, you can double click on this number. And it will easily tell you, yep, there was only one sale made by Peacock on that date. And that just creates a new sheet for you down here. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to know for each month of each year what the sales were. So imagine what it's doing. It's adding up for each date. It's just adding up the total invoices for that date. But because dates have days in them, they have months in them, they have years in them, and they're not based on tens, they're based on like 30 days or 31 days in a month, 12 months in a year, etc. What we can do is right click on a date, go to group, and tell Excel exactly how we want to group this. So I could say just months, and let's have a look. It'll group everything by months, but that's from the beginning of time. So I'm going to right click again, group, and I'm going to say just years. Right? Get rid of months, say years, and it's going to give me all the years. If I right click again and group, I can do months and years, or I could do years and quarters. I mean, whatever it is that you want to see, it will do for you. Just keep grouping. So I'll do months and years. And by the way, this part does not work. So for example, if I asked you a question, what is the total sales from June 1st to December 31st of 2004? Don't use this. It is actually broken. It doesn't work. It's better you just do months and years. It will break it down by year and then by month. So why not just highlight June to December 2004 and your answer will be at the bottom. Okay? So let's see. Why don't we right click group again. I'm going to get rid of the years. I just want to see the months. And what this tells you, in every single month ever, total sales, for example, in January were $148,000. Now, if you double click on this number, it will tell you all the sales that happened in any given January. That's called a drill down. Okay? So we're just going to right click, delete this again. Now, here's how you need to look at it. In the month of January, there were so many sales that were done. So let's say 50 different sales invoices totaled $148,000. So if I had that number, I can average it out. $148,000 divided by 50 invoices would give me the average. Now, we don't actually need to do that. If you right click on a number and go to value field settings, and this is important, right? Right click on a number, value field settings, pivots will actually let you go from a total of those numbers to counting how many there were, and it tells you the number of invoices, 90, for example, versus right-click value field settings, averaging them out. So when you average, it's going to divide by the number of invoices for you. So the average invoice in the month of January was 1,649. Now, if I ask you a question, what was the month where we consistently get the highest average invoices, where customers are ordering more at one time than any other month, you can try to look for the highest number. And I'm thinking it's this one here. But obviously, I don't trust my eyes because it tricked me. I think this is the highest. So word of advice or recommendation is to click on a number, go to the top right-hand corner in the Home tab, and sort it. So let's sort it largest to smallest. And now clearly May is the highest month. And we can verify if that's consistent year over year by right-click, group, and add the years back. So that's a little demonstration of how to use right-click group and right-click value field settings to average, count versus sum. And I got to tell you, in any pivot, when you do a group or you do one of those right-click averages or you use this, try not recycling it. Go to a brand new pivot, start fresh. Okay. Actually, let's go back to data 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert a fresh pivot. And this time I'd like to put salesperson over here in box 2 to see the names. And I'd like to see their days to close. Now what this means is that for Buchanan, for all the sales that he's done, total days that took 200 to close a sale. And the shorter you can close a sale, the more efficient you are. But adding that up means nothing. That's like saying how many total days have you been awake this year. It means nothing, right? So this is where you might want to right-click, value field settings, and average it out. So on average, and you can certainly fix up the number if you like, but it says on average, Buchanan took 4.76 days to close the sales. And you can split that apart by date, etc. So I'm just going to sort this, high to low. And Tsuyama and DeValio are the worst salespeople we've got because they take way too long to close a sale. These two, Fuller and Buchanan, are the best. They're pretty efficient. But I want to show you what box 4 means. Let's say your boss asks you to do analysis by country. Okay? So I could take country and I could put it, actually look, I could put it in box 2. And it gives me each salesperson and what country they're in. But that looks kind of weird. So why not go over here to box 2 and move salesperson below country? That's called a pivot. See, it's exactly the same data. The data does not change, but now it's giving you country, then salesperson, and you can do some analysis around that. But really what you might want to do is move country out to report filter, which is box 4, the last box I'll demonstrate. And when you do that, you get this. This is called auto filter arrow. When you click on it, it gives you all the choices. And you can choose one or the other country. Now, if you have a lot of choices, you can do select multiple items and just check or uncheck. So let's say today your boss is saying to slice or narrow in on just the UK. Click it, click OK, and the data you see will be drilled down to just the UK. Okay, we call that a slice. Now, I'm going to go back to data 1 and just one final demonstration. And that is if you want to graphically represent this. Okay, so if you go to Insert and under Pivot Table click the arrow, you'll see Pivot Chart. Now in other versions of pivots, this Pivot Chart button actually appears over to the right. But either way, click on it, click OK, and you'll get a very similar pivot zone. We're going to move this chart area down, maybe just make it as large as we possibly can. Now whatever you drop down here will be represented in the chart. And again, unless you try and practice it, you're not going to know what it does. So let's have a look. I'm going to put total sales in values. And that's my total sales, $1.2 million. And just like any other chart, you can always right click on this. You can change the title. You can do whatever you like. Okay, so I'm just going to fix this number up. Make it into dollars. There we go. Now I want to break these sales down by country. So I'm going to put country in row labels. So there's my UK, there's my USA. To see what happens if I put it in columns. Okay, pretty similar. It's kind of strange to see it this way, but that's okay, right? And I want to now put salesperson in the row labels. So look what it does. It gives me the countries. I know red is USA, blue is UK, and it's splitting it down by salesperson. And if I wanted to, I could do even dates. Actually, that's fantastic because look, if I take country and salesperson out, put order date in the rows, and you remember we already grouped it, right? So it's going to give me sales for each month. And if I right click group it again, let's do months and years, it's going to give me the 3 years, and I could see some sort of trends. And of course you could do all sorts of stuff with the graph. You can change the types, etc. by right clicking on it, right? So what you want to do is play around with these features, play around with the different data here. I'm going to create some smaller videos that are going to answer some trickier questions and post those. But unless you practice it and try the various things, and you realize there's only about 8 things really you need to know, then you won't develop any awareness of how pivots behave. And always make sure that you study the data first, that you know what the columns mean, and then come up with the set of questions that you want answered so you can glean the intelligence out of it. And then typically when you get these results in pivots, you're going to copy, paste, or write these in a full report, maybe in Microsoft Word, using graphs, etc., to demonstrate your point. So have some fun with it, and look forward to the smaller videos.